The cry for help the night was cold and silent at the edge of the outpost. Stars stretched endlessly above, and the desert ground was still, except for the low hum of machines keeping the base alive. David sat alone in the control room, his eyes heavy with sleep. For weeks, nothing unusual had happened. The screens showed the same empty skies, the same dust storms in the distance. But then a sound broke through the silence. It was faint at first, like static, almost easy to ignore. David leaned forward, adjusting the receiver. He thought it might be a broken signal from a satellite. But then the sound shaped itself into words. A trembling voice spoke through the static. "Please, fix my mom. She won't stop shaking." David froze. The voice was small, fragile like a child's. But there was something strange about it too. It didn't sound fully human. He replayed the signal. Same words, same desperate tone. The child was crying. David felt a chill climb his spine. There were no families out here, no children for hundreds of miles. So where had the voice come from? He activated the tracker, following the faint signal. The coordinates were close, just outside the outpost, beyond the rocky hills. Against all reason, David grabbed his flashlight, his old toolkit, and his sidearm. Something deep in his gut told him this was no prank, no malfunction. The desert wind bit at his skin as he walked toward the hills. The night was unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that felt alive. Every crunch of his boots echoed louder than it should. Then he saw it. A dark shape, twisted and broken, half buried in the sand. A ship small, nothing like human design. Its metal glowed faintly, as if alive. One side was torn open, smoke rising weakly into the night sky. David's heart raced. This was no ordinary crash. He stepped closer, light sweeping over strange symbols carved into the hull. The ship groaned as if it was breathing. And then he heard it again. The same weak voice. "Please, help us." David climbed inside. The air smelled burnt, mixed with something sweet and metallic. Sparks flickered from broken panels. And in the middle of the wreck, huddled against the wall, was a small figure. A child, but not human. The child's skin shimmered faintly blue under the flashlight. Their eyes were large, too large, glowing softly as tears rolled down their face. They were shaking, holding on to the limp hand of someone lying beside them. David's throat tightened. The figure on the ground was a woman, older, but clearly the same species as the child. Her body jerked unnaturally, as if invisible hands were pulling at her muscles. Every few seconds, she shook violently, her head snapping to the side. The child looked up at David. Fear and hope mixed in their glowing eyes. "You're human," the child whispered. "You can fix things. Please, fix my mom." David felt his chest tighten. He wanted to comfort the child, to say yes, but he didn't even know what was wrong with the woman. He crouched down, his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. "What happened?" David asked softly. The child sniffled, struggling for words. "Something got inside her. It makes her shake. It won't stop. I don't know how to fix it. Please, you have to help." David looked at the woman again. Her skin rippled, as though something was moving underneath. His stomach turned. This wasn't a simple wound, or even a sickness. Something alive was. Inside her, the child clutched his sleeve desperately. "You're the only one. Please don't let her die." David's mind raced. He was just an engineer, not a doctor. But he couldn't walk away, not from the child's pleading eyes. Not from the terror in that wreck. Then, suddenly, the woman convulsed violently. Her body arched, her mouth opening in a silent scream. David reached forward instinctively, trying to hold her steady. And that was when he saw it. From the corner of his eye, something moved. A shadow. But the flashlight was steady, and there was nothing to cast it. The shadow crawled across the wall, writhing like smoke, and then slithered toward the woman's body. David's breath caught. The child screamed, "It's here." The shadow pressed against the woman's skin, disappearing inside her as if her body were water. The shaking grew worse, violent enough to rattle the broken ship. David backed up, his heart pounding. This wasn't just illness. This was invasion. He grabbed the child, pulling them close as the woman's body twisted unnaturally, her glowing eyes snapping open. She looked at him, but it wasn't her looking anymore. Something else stared back. Something cold. David held his breath. The child whispered, tears streaming down their glowing cheeks, "Please. You're the only human. You're our lifeline." And in that moment, David understood whatever this was. It wasn't just about saving the mother. If the thing inside her could spread, humanity itself might be in danger. But for now, only one thing mattered. The cry for help. The alien child's secret. The air inside the broken ship was heavy, filled with smoke and strange smells. David's chest ached as he breathed. He kept the flashlight steady, its beam cutting across twisted metal, glowing wires, and broken glass. The alien child clung to his arm tightly, trembling with every sound. The woman on the ground, the mother still, shook violently. Her glowing eyes rolled back as if she was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape. David wanted to help, but he didn't even know where to start. He was only an engineer. Machines he could fix. Engines, wires, circuit CS. But this was a life. The child's voice broke the silence. Soft, cracked with fear. You can fix things, right? Humans fix machines. David looked down at the child. Their skin glowed faintly, veins pulsing with light under the surface. He had never seen anything like it. "I can try," he said carefully. "But what's wrong with her? What happened?" The child's large, glowing eyes filled with tears. "Something followed us, something hungry. It got inside her when the ship broke. It hides. It shakes her because it feeds on her blood, her light. If she dies," the child's voice cracked, "then I will be next." David frowned. The words felt too heavy for a child, yet they carried a truth that made his stomach twist. He crouched, studying the mother's trembling body. Her chest rose and fell fast, too fast. Every time she shook, the ship seemed to groan with her. "Why did you come here?" David asked. "Why Earth?" The child blinked, as if searching for the right words. Finally, they touched the glowing stone hanging around their neck, small crystal, cracked but still pulsing faintly with light. "We were looking for help," the child whispered. "Our people are dying." The shadows spread from world to world. "We thought maybe humans could help. Our maps said humans fix and build. We thought you could stop it." David's throat tightened. He had never heard anything like this. Parasites traveling across space, destroying whole civilizations. It sounded impossible. And yet, the evidence was right in front of him. The trembling woman. The moving shadow he had seen. The child pressed the crystal into David's hands. It was warm, vibrating faintly. When he looked into it, his vision blurred. Suddenly, pictures flashed in his mind. Planet under a red sky, tall towers glowing with the same blue veins as the child's skin. Cities alive with light, and then the light swallowed by crawling shadows. Entire buildings shaking, people falling, their bodies convulsing just like the mother's. David gasped, nearly dropping the crystal. The visions ended as quickly as they began. His hand shook as he returned it to the child. "That's your home?" David asked, his voice low. The child nodded. Now only a few of us are left." We ran, but the shadows followed. David sat back, against the metal wall, his mind racing. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be the one they found, but somehow he was. One lonely engineer, face to face with a dying alien and their terrified child. He looked at the woman again. Her body jerked violently, as though invisible chains were pulling her in every direction. David leaned closer, shining the light across her chest. For just a second, he saw something move under her skin, something black. Writhing, pressing upward like it wanted to crawl free. He flinched back. His hands were sweating. "Is it inside her blood?" he asked. The child shook their head. "Not. Blood, light. It eats the light inside us. When there is no light left, it spreads. It looks for more." David understood now. The glowing veins in the child's skin, the same glow in the mother's eyes, wasn't just for show. It was life itself, energy, and the parasite was draining it. He swallowed hard. "If it comes out of her," he didn't finish the sentence. The thought of that thing moving freely in the desert, crawling toward the outpost, toward his people was unbearable. The child gripped his sleeve again. "You have machines. You can trap it." "My mother said, humans are strong with machines. Please, use them. Please save her." David looked around. Its panels sparking, its wires dangling like vines. His toolkit felt small, useless. How could a handful of human tools fight something that devoured light itself? And yet he saw hope in the child's eyes. A fragile hope, but real. He couldn't walk away. He stood slowly, tightening his grip on the flashlight. "First, we need to get your mother to the outpost," he said firmly. "I have equipment. There. Maybe I can build something too. Contain it." The child nodded quickly, wiping tears with the back of their glowing hand. But before they could move, the mother let out a sudden, horrible sound, a scream that wasn't fully hers. Her body lifted from the floor, shaking violently. The walls of the ship rattled. Lights flickered. David froze as he saw it again. The shadow, crawling out from her chest, long and thin like smoke, reaching toward him. The child screamed. David acted without thinking. He grabbed a broken piece of metal, swinging it through the air. The shadow hissed, recoiling, then slithered back into the woman's body. She collapsed against the floor, trembling harder than ever. David's heart pounded. His body shook almost as much as hers. He looked at the child, who stared at him with wide, glowing eyes. "You see it too," the child whispered. "Most humans can't see it, but you can." David's breath caught. He hadn't thought about that. Why could he see it? The child squeezed his hand, voice trembling but certain. "That means you really are our lifeline." David stared down at the trembling woman, then at the alien child clinging to him. The weight of their words settled heavy in his chest. He was only an engineer. But now, in this silent desert night, with shadows moving inside broken flesh, he realized something terrifying. Maybe he was the only one who could stop it. The first encounter, the desert stretched silent outside the wreck, but inside the ship, it was chaos. The mother's body twitched and shuddered, her veins glowing too bright, as if something inside her was trying to burn its way out. The alien child clung to David's arm, their glowing eyes full of fear. David's hands shook as he pulled the mother gently, trying to lift her. She was light, too light for her size, as though something had drained her strength. Every time she jerked, David felt a strange vibration travel through his own bones. The child whispered, "It feels you now. It knows you touched her." David froze. What does that mean? The child shook their head quickly, as if afraid to say the words aloud, and then he saw it. From the corner of the wreck, a movement. A sliver of shadow peeling away from the wall, though there was no light behind it. It crawled across the floor like smoke, dragging itself forward, reaching for him. David's breath caught. He had seen shadows move before, in tricks of light, in fear and exhaustion, but this was no trick. This shadow had weight. It made the metal groan as it slid over it. The child screamed, "Don't let it touch you." The shadow lunged. David dropped the mother, pulling the child close as he stumbled backward. The thing leaped toward his chest, but at the last second, he swung the flashlight. The beam of light hit it, and for an instant, the shadow screamed. The sound wasn't loud. It was like nails scraping the inside of his skull. The thing recoiled, twisting, burning faintly at the edges where the beam had struck. But it wasn't gone. It slid sideways, circling them, looking for a way around. The light, David's pulse hammered. He pointed the flashlight wildly, trying to keep the thing at bay. His other hand reached for his toolkit. Something, anything, to fight with. The child clung to him, whispering fast, panicked words. Light hurts it, but it learns. It always learns. David's mind raced. Light, machines, sound. He needed more than just a flashlight. He needed a way to trap it. But for now, survival was all that mattered. The shadow suddenly split in two, both halves darting toward him from different sides. David cursed, swinging the light left, then right. One half hissed, burning in the glow, but the other half leaped past, slamming against the mother's body. She arched violently, her scream echoing through the wreck like broken glass. David felt his stomach twist. The shadow wasn't just feeding it, was using her. The mother's glowing eyes snapped open. For a moment, they weren't hers. They stared at him with something else's hunger. Her jaw stretched wider than it should have, trembling as if the shadow was trying to speak through her. David stepped back, heart pounding. "This isn't her anymore," he muttered, but the child screamed, "No, she's still there. Don't leave her." David hesitated, sweat dripping down his face. His instincts screamed to run, to leave this cursed ship behind, to let the darkness consume itself. But the child's desperate grip on his arm stopped him. He couldn't abandon them. He steadied the flashlight again, keeping the beam steady. On the mother's face, for a second, the hunger in her eyes faded, replaced by something else, pain, maybe, or fear. She gasped, her voice breaking through. "Help. Us." The shadow inside her writhed, pulling her mouth closed again. Her body convulsed violently, slamming against the metal floor. David's heart raced faster. He couldn't fight it forever. With just a light, he needed another way. His mind flashed through his tools: magnets, wires, batteries, coils. Maybe he could build a crude field, something to hold it. But there was no time now. The shadow lunged again. David dropped the toolkit and grabbed a broken piece of metal from the wreck. He swung it through the air. It passed right through the shadow, doing nothing. The thing hissed, twisting around the weapon, then darting at his arm. Pain shot through him like ice. For a heartbeat, the shadow touched his skin. He felt it cold, endless, a hunger gnawing at the edges of his mind. His vision blurred. His hand trembled. The child screamed, "No. Don't let it inside." David roared, swinging the flashlight hard. The beam cut across his arm, burning the shadow off. It shrieked and slithered back into the mother's body, leaving his skin numb and his veins tingling faintly. He looked down. For just a second, he thought he saw something glowing under his own skin. A faint, pulsing light, like the veins of the aliens. Fear stabbed his chest. What if it had already left a part of itself in him? But there was no time to think. The child was crying, shaking him. "You can see it. You can fight it. You're the only one. David forced his breath steady. His flashlight flickered, batteries dying. He knew when it went dark, the shadow would strike again. He picked up his toolkit with one hand, gripping the child with the other. Us. His voice was firm, even though his heart hammered. We're leaving. Now, if we stay here, it wins. The child hesitated, looking at their trembling mother. But her will bring her, David said. His voice broke, but he forced it steady. I'll find a way, but not here. Not like this. He lifted the mother again, her body still shaking violently, and dragged her toward the opening of the ship. The desert wind howled outside, and the stars shone cold above. Behind him, in the wreck, the shadows hissed, sliding across the walls like snakes in the dark. They weren't safe. Not yet. But this was only the beginning. David glanced at his arm again, the faint glow still pulsing under his skin. He clenched his jaw. He didn't tell the child what he had seen. Not yet. Some secrets had to wait. The outpost door slammed, shut behind them, sealing the night out. David dropped the heavy lock into place, his chest heaving. The desert wind howled against the metal walls. But inside, there was only silence and the faint hum of the generators. The alien mother lay on a table in the medical bay, still shaking violently. The child stayed close, gripping her limp hand. Glowing eyes wet with tears. David leaned against the wall, sweat running down his neck. The flashlight dim in his hand. He could still feel its icy touch where the shadow had brushed his arm. The memory made him shiver. And when he looked down in the dim light, he thought he saw it again. A faint glow under his skin, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. He clenched his fist, pulling his sleeve down to hide it. The child couldn't know. Not yet. The child broke the silence with a small, trembling voice. She's still in there. I can feel her. But the shadow is strong. David looked at the mother. Her chest rose and fell too fast. Each breath, a battle. If the shadow feeds on her light, then I need to understand her body. Your people. How do you work? What is this? Light. The child hesitated, then pulled the crystal from around their neck. It glowed faintly in their small hand. This is a memory stone. It shows what we see, what we feel. I don't know if humans can read it, but maybe you can. David frowned, but took it carefully. The moment it touched his skin, his vision blurred. Images rushed into his head, against too bright, too fast. A shining city, towers alive with veins of blue. People with glowing skin walking through streets of glass. Laughter, voices, songs, and then darkness spreading like ink, swallowing the light, pulling screaming figures into shadows. He gasped, pulling the crystal away. His heart pounded in his chest. The child's glowing eyes were wide. You saw it. David nodded slowly. I think so. Your people. Your world. The child crawled closer, clutching the crystal tightly again. We are called Luma. Our light is our life. It is in our blood, in our hearts. When it fades, we die. The shadows eat it. They drink it until nothing is left. That is why we ran. David sat down heavily, his mind spinning. Luma, a people made of light, hunted by shadows. It sounded impossible, like a story. But he had seen it with his own eyes, felt it burn against his skin. He looked at the child, and why me? Why humans? Why did you think we could help? The child sniffled, staring down at the floor. My mother said humans were builders, makers. That humans fix broken things, she told me. Maybe you could fix even this. David's chest tightened. He thought of his life before this night, lonely shifts, endless repairs, days blending into one another. He was just one man. An engineer at the edge of nowhere. Not a doctor. Not a savior. And yet, here he was, the only one standing between this child, their dying mother, and the thing crawling inside her. The child looked up at him suddenly, eyes glowing brighter. There's more. You can see the shadows. Most humans can't. That means you are different. That means you are chosen. David stiffened. He hadn't told them about the glow in his arm. Had they noticed already? He forced his face still. I don't know about chosen, he said roughly, but I'll try. The child's lips trembled, but then they nodded. For the first time, there was a flicker of trust in their eyes, fragile but real. Hours passed in uneasy quiet. David worked at his bench, laying out wires, magnets, and batteries. He had an idea, crude, dangerous, but maybe enough to hold the shadow when it tried to escape again. The child sat nearby, whispering softly in their strange tongue, singing. To the mother, though, she didn't respond once. The child wandered to David's side, watching as he twisted wires together. Why do you stay? They asked suddenly. David didn't look up. What do you mean? You could leave? Humans. You don't know us. You don't have to help, but you stay. David paused, his hands tightening around the tools. He thought of the signal he had first heard, the child's voice, begging for help. He thought of the look in their eyes, the desperation. He thought of how empty his life had been before, and how suddenly everything had changed. Because someone has to, he said finally. The child smiled faintly, the glow in their cheeks softening. Then maybe you are more Luma than human. David almost smiled back, but then the mother convulsed violently, jerking against the table. The machines rattled. A low hiss filled the air, like steam escaping from cracks. David spun, the flashlight in his hand. The shadow moved again, writhing. Under her skin, pressing up against her chest, her throat, her eyes. The light in her veins flickered weakly, like a candle about to die. The child cried out, grabbing her hand. Stay with me, Mama. David's pulse spiked. He reached for the half-built device on his bench, but it was unfinished, not ready. He was out of time. The shadow rose higher inside her, straining against her flesh. For a moment, it pressed against her mouth, almost forcing itself free. David's grip tightened on the flashlight, ready to burn it back. But then the mother's lips parted, and a voice came out, not hers, low, cold, crawling like poison into the air. You cannot save her, human. She is ours. The child screamed. David stepped forward, heart racing. For the first time, the shadow had spoken. And now he knew this was no simple parasite. It was something far worse, something intelligent. The hunt in the dark, the lights of the outpost flickered once, twice. Then, without warning, everything went black. The hum of the generators died, leaving only silence. A heavy, unnatural silence. David froze at his workbench, wires and coils scattered in front of him. His heart sank. The timing was too perfect. The child gasped in the dark, clutching their mother's trembling hand. They're here. David's throat tightened. He grabbed his flashlight, clicking it on. A narrow beam cut through the black, landing on the pale, shaking figure of the alien mother. Her glowing veins flickered weakly, like a failing lantern. Then he heard it scraping. From the walls, from the ceiling. The sound of something crawling where nothing should crawl. The child whimpered, pressing close to him. They don't like light, but they're learning. David swept the beam across the room. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then movement. Shadows peeling from the corners, stretching long and thin, slithering across the floor toward them. Stay behind me, David whispered. Raising the flashlight, the shadows recoiled from the beam, but not far. They hissed, voices whispering. From the darkness, his stomach turned as he realized the voices weren't their own. They were echoes of human voices. Voices from dead crew members who once worked here. David, one hissed. Why fight? Join us, another whispered. Let us in. It feels good. David's grip on the flashlight tightened, knuckles white. They're not real, he muttered to himself. They're not real. But the whispers grew louder, circling them. The shadows moved like wolves, testing his reach, darting close, then back again. The beam was their only barrier. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. No. No, David smacked it hard. The beam steadied, but weaker now. His chest pounded. If it died completely, they were finished. He needed another plan. His half-built device sat useless on the bench. He had to buy time. Come on, he said to the child, his voice sharp but low. We can't stay in one room. He pulled the mother onto a rolling stretcher, the child helping push. The wheels screeched against the floor as they moved down the hallway. Shadows slid along the walls beside them, faster now, whispering louder. Why protect them? Human. One hissed. They're not yours. David gritted his teeth. He shoved the stretcher forward, the flashlight beam bouncing across the walls. For every shadow that hissed and pulled back, 3 more slithered closer. Testing the edges of the light, they reached the main hall long, wide, and filled with crates of supplies. The emergency lights overhead flickered faint red, giving everything a bloody glow. The shadows danced at the edges of the light, waiting. The child looked up at him, tears glowing on their cheeks. We can't run forever. They will break us. David knew they were right. Running wasn't enough. He needed to fight back. He looked around the hall, mind racing. Crates, metal fuel cells stacked against the wall. And yes, the sound system. Large speakers used for alarms and broadcasts. Now offline with the power down, an idea sparked. Help me, David said quickly, shoving crates aside. He dug into his toolkit, pulling wires and a portable battery. His fingers moved fast, twisting, connecting. Stripping wires with his teeth when he had no tools left. The shadows hissed louder, sensing his distraction. One darted closer, nearly reaching the child's foot before David swung the flashlight and burned it back. They're stalling me, why David realized. They want the light to die on its own. The flashlight flickered again. His stomach lurched, but he worked faster. The child watched, clutching the crystal around their neck. Their small voice whispered, almost like prayer. Light against shadow. Light against shadow. David connected the last wire, sparks flying. The speakers hummed to life, powered by the battery. A piercing high-frequency sound filled the hall. The shadows screamed. David's skin crawled as the sound vibrated. Through him, but the effect was immediate. The shadows pulled back, twisting violently. Writhing on the walls as though the sound itself burned them. The child's eyes widened. It hurts them. David grinned grimly. Then let's make it louder. He cranked the frequency higher. The walls shook with the sound. Shadows convulsed, melting into the corners, twisting into shapes that weren't possible. For the first time, they looked less like predators and more like prey. But then something deeper answered. From the far end of the hall, the shadows split apart, making way for a larger form. A mass of darkness, thicker than smoke, taller than any human. Its voice boomed through the hall, deeper than thunder. Clever. Human. David's grip on the controls tightened. The child pressed against him, trembling. The mother convulsed. Harder on the stretcher, as if the larger shadow pulled directly at her life. The massive shadow didn't recoil like the others. The sound only made it ripple, as though amused. You think noise will save you? It rumbled. We are endless. We are hunger. And you are already mine. David felt his veins burn. His arm tingled where the glow pulsed faintly under his skin. He clenched his jaw, refusing to look down at it. Not now. Not in front of the child. Instead, he raised his chin and glared into the dark. Then, come and take me. The hall shook as the giant shadow lunged. David yanked the battery to full power. The speakers screamed louder than before, rattling the walls, cracking glass. The smaller shadows scattered, shrieking. The giant one roared, its form trembling, pieces of it tearing away like ash in the wind. The child covered their ears, crying out. David held the flashlight steady, beam locked on the giant shadow's head. Between light and sound, the monster writhed in pain. For a heartbeat, it looked as though they might win. But then the flashlight died. Darkness swallowed the hall. The sound still screamed, but without light, the giant shadow surged forward. Its massive form blotting out everything. David grabbed the child, pulling them behind the stretcher. His voice was raw with fear, but steady. Stay behind me, no matter what happens. The giant shadow loomed closer, whispering in a voice that shook the walls. You are already glowing, human. You are already ours. The last attempt to haul shook with the roar of the giant shadow. The speakers screamed at full power, but it wasn't enough. Without the flashlight's beam, the darkness surged like a tide, filling every corner. Crawling closer with hunger, David dragged the stretcher backward, the alien child gripping his sleeve tightly. The mother convulsed on the table, her glowing veins flickering weakly, almost gone. Every shake rattled the wheels. Every gasp sounded weaker than the last. The child's voice broke through the chaos, trembling but fierce. If she dies, I die too. Please, save her. David's chest ached at the plea. He stared at the unfinished device on his bench. Wires, coils, magnets, alien crystal shards scavenged from the ship. A plan had been forming in his mind for hours, but it was reckless, dangerous. One wrong move, and he could kill them all. But now, there was no choice. He shoved the stretcher closer to the bench, yelling over the sound of the speakers. Hold the light crystal to her chest. Don't let go. The child obeyed, pressing the glowing stone against the mother's trembling body. The glow flared brighter for a moment, then flickered weakly again. David's hands moved fast, grabbing wires, slamming tools onto the bench. Sweat dripped down his face. His mind raced, every calculation sharper under the pressure of survival. He was an engineer. This was his battlefield. He built quickly. A magnetic field coil from scavenged wiring. A containment loop reinforced with alien crystal dust. A high-frequency modulator wired into the speaker system. The idea was simple in theory. Lure the shadow out, trap it in the field, and burn it with sound and energy until it broke apart. But in practice, it was madness. The shadow was intelligent. It would fight. And if the field collapsed, the parasite could escape maybe into him. Maybe into the entire outpost. The child watched him, wide-eyed. Will it work? David didn't look up. His voice was low, hard. I don't know. The giant shadow moved closer, its voice crawling across the walls. You cannot win, human. You cannot save her. You will break, and you will feed us. David ignored it, twisting the last wire into place. Sparks burst, the machine whining with unstable energy. The smell of burning metal filled the air. He gritted his teeth. Get ready. Once I start this, there's no turning back. The child held their mother's hand tightly, tears glowing on their cheeks. Please, you're our lifeline. David's chest tightened at the words. He nodded once, then slammed the switch. The machine roared to life. A blinding blue field snapped around the mother's body, humming with unstable energy. The air buzzed like static, pulling at the hair on David's arms. The speakers screeched. The frequency tuned sharper, focused. The shadow inside the mother reacted instantly. Her body arched, shaking violently as the dark shape writhed under her skin, trying to escape. The glow in her veins pulsed, then dimmed, then flared again. The child screamed, "It's hurting her." David's jaw clenched. "It's not hurting her. It's hurting it. Don't let go." The mother screamed a sound not fully hers. Her chest heaved as the shadow inside her pushed upward, pressing against her throat, her eyes, her mouth. And then, with a sickening lurch, it tore free. A long, writhing shape of black smoke burst from her chest, thrashing violently in the field. The containment coil sparked, straining against the force. The shadow shrieked, a high, piercing sound that rattled the walls. David shouted over the noise, "Hold it steady." He turned dials, increasing the field strength. The machine groaned, sparks flying. The shadow writhed harder, slamming against the invisible barrier. The child sobbed but held the crystal tighter against their mother. The glow grew stronger, flowing into her veins again. The tremors slowed. For the first time, she took a breath without shaking. David's heart pounded. It was working. But the shadow was not giving up. It twisted violently, stretching tendrils through the cracks of the field. Sparks exploded as wires burned. The machine wailed on the edge of collapse. David grabbed a loose cable, jamming it into the circuit. Electricity surged, lighting the room in a blinding flash. The smell of ozone filled the air. His arm burned as current seared through him, but he didn't let go. The shadow screamed louder, pieces of it tearing away in the field, dissolving into smoke. But with every second, the machine broke further. The coils glowed red, the wires melting. The giant shadow in the hall bellowed, shaking the walls. "Fool, you burn yourself for nothing. You cannot destroy us. You cannot," David roared back, voice raw, furious. "Watch me." He shoved the power to maximum. The machine exploded in light. For a single heartbeat, the entire hall was filled. With blinding blue, the shadow thrashed violently, its scream cutting through bone and blood, until at last, shattered. Pieces of black smoke scattered into the air. Then dissolved into nothing. Silence fell. The mother collapsed onto the table. Her body still, but no longer trembling. Her glowing veins pulsed slowly, faint but alive. The child sobbed, hugging her tightly, whispering thanks between tears. David staggered, his hands burned, his arm glowing faintly beneath the skin. He leaned against the ruined bench, breathing hard. His vision blurred, ears ringing from the machine's final scream. He had done it, for now. But in the silence, he knew the truth. The shadows weren't gone, all of them. The giant one had vanished into the walls, retreating, waiting. And inside his own body, the faint glow pulsed. Stronger now, as if something had been left behind. The child looked up at him, eyes wide with both fear and hope. "You saved her. You saved us." David forced a weak smile. "Maybe. But this isn't over." The lights flickered once. Twice, somewhere deep in the outpost, a new hiss echoed in the dark. The hunt was not finished. The lifeline, the silence. After the machine's explosion was heavy, almost holy. Smoke curled from the shattered coils, and sparks still hissed from burnt wires. The hall smelled of metal and ozone. But for the first time since this nightmare began, there was no screaming. The alien mother lay on the stretcher, her chest rising and falling in slow, steady breaths. The violent shaking had stopped. Glowing veins pulsed faintly, weak but alive. The child knelt at her side, pressing their forehead against her hand. Tears ran down their glowing cheeks. "She's breathing. She's really breathing." David leaned against the wall, his whole body trembling from exhaustion. His hands were blistered, his arms burned from electricity. He could still feel the echo of the shadow inside him, a cold hum in his veins. But he stayed silent, hiding his pain. For now, this moment belonged to them. The child looked up, eyes shining like twin stars. You saved her. You did what even our people could not. David forced a tired smile. I just built a cage. She fought to come back. But deep down, he knew the truth. If the machine had failed, if he had hesitated, both the mother and the child would be gone. And maybe himself too. Minutes passed. The mother stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light. For a long moment, she stared at David, her gaze heavy, tired, but alive. Then her lips moved, her voice weak, but clear. You heard my child's call. And you answered. David swallowed, unsure what to say. He wasn't a hero, not in his own eyes. Just a man who couldn't walk away from a voice begging for help. The mother's hand trembled as she reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist. You are not only human now. The words chilled him. He pulled back quickly, covering his arm. But the child had already noticed. Their glowing eyes widened as they caught the faint light pulsing under David's skin. Your veins. The child whispered. You carry the light now. David's jaw tightened. He tried to pull his sleeve lower, but it was too late. The glow was there, faint but undeniable. He had touched the shadow, fought it, survived a tan. Something had stayed behind. The mother closed her eyes again, weak but certain. The shadows marked you, but the light chose you. The child looked from their mother to David, hope and fear tangled in their glowing gaze. Does that mean? You're one of us now. David had no answer. His chest tightened with unease. If he carried the shadow, he could be a danger to them, to everyone. Yet, if he carried their light too, maybe he was the bridge, the outpost. Lights flickered faintly, groaning back to life. Emergency systems hummed. The battle had scarred the building, but for now, it held. The shadows had retreated into the night, but not gone. Never gone, David pushed himself up, ignoring the pain in his arms. We can't stay here. This place isn't safe anymore. They'll come back, stronger. The mother coughed weakly, but her voice carried weight. They will always come back. The shadows never stop. They are hunger without end. But you can stand against them. David shook his head. I'm just an engineer. The child's small hand touched his burned fingers, gentle, firm. No, you are our lifeline. Without you, we would have no hope. The words struck him harder than any shadow. He wanted to argue, to say they were wrong. But when he looked at them, the innocent trust in their eyes, the fragile hope on their faces, he couldn't. Maybe, just maybe, they were right. The mother drifted back into a healing sleep. The child curled close to her, their small glow lighting the dark like a lantern. David sat nearby, his eyes heavy but restless. His body ached, his mind buzzed, and still his arm pulsed faintly with that strange new light. He stared at it in the silence, flexing his hand slowly. The glow followed his pulse, beating with his heart. He didn't know if it was a gift or a curse, but he knew one thing. He was no longer the same man who had sat alone in the control room at the start of this night. Outside, the desert was quiet again. Stars stretched endlessly above, cold and distant. Somewhere, far in the shadows, whispers still lingered. Watching, waiting. David closed his eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle. The child's breathing calmed. The mother's pulse steadied. For now, they were safe. But in his chest, carried the weight of the truth. This fight was only beginning, and he the lonely human engineer. Now glowing faintly with alien light, had become the one thing the shadows could not ignore. The lifeline,